All right, everybody, we're just getting started a minute early here so that everybody can get logged in. If you'll just bear with me for a moment, if you're on, well, not more than a minute early, but I'm going to go ahead and get the Facebook Live going, and then I will get us started. All right. Well, David, you look great surrounded by all that fall foliage. All right. Let's see. We're officially at 2, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Welcome, everybody, to today's virtual plant clinic. I'm getting the Facebook Live set up now. To anybody who is joining us on this virtual plant clinic for the first time, welcome. We're really happy that you are here. Just make note of a couple of things. First, since this is a webinar format, if you want to ask us a question, you're going to hit the Q&A button on your Zoom menu, and you will type your question into that Q&A box. I'll be monitoring that and taking questions when David is ready to take questions. We are recording today's webinar, so if you need to leave for any reason, you'll be able to access it tomorrow on our YouTube channel. And finally, for anybody who might be joining us who lives outside of Virginia, just make note that any plants we're discussing today are discussed with our garden zone in mind, which is zone 7. So if you're from outside the area, of course, we're happy we're here, that you're here. Just be aware that some of these plants will be a little bit different from the things that you might have locally. All right, well, David, thank you so much. I'm getting us going now, and I'll be monitoring any questions, so I'll let you get started.
All right, well, thank you, Sally, and thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. Wow, we've really been blessed this week with some beautiful gardening weather that's out there. So I hope you have had the opportunity to get out there and, do some of your fall planting and really get out there and enjoy yourself and your time out in the garden. So I was thinking last time we met a couple of weeks ago, kind of focused on how the shorter days, the cooler temperatures, and started to initiate a lot of flowering in plants. So I thought today my focus would be really on the fall foliage. Again, because this really is such a beautiful time of the year. And by talking about this, a lot of our colors have not really even kicked in. You're seeing little hints of it out there, but we're still a couple weeks away, 2 to 3 weeks at least, I'm going to say, from peak foliage color. So you've got the opportunity. If you see something you like or inspire you, you can still go out, buy it and plant it, and be there to enjoy this fall. But I really think to kick things off, I just have a little short video. As I say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So this was actually taken, I think, on October 26th in 2019. I was going through some of my records and stumbled on this. It was a beautiful fall display that was put together by our staff out in the Gainesville location. And it shows the diversity of plants, where you've got the plants that are flowering, you've got the evergreens, of course, pumpkins and things like that. But again, my focus is going to be on the fall foliage. So right in front of you there, that looks like probably a Japanese maple, I'm going to guess, this lighting up in front of us. The yellow is a ginkgo tree that we'll be talking about. Some azaleas in the foreground, viburnum back there, and coming back again into a Japanese maple, burning bush, red buds. And that's just a little tiny, small taste of what you can find if you stop by the garden center here. So we will be taking questions throughout the program. So as Sally mentioned, we can't hear you, but we sure do want to hear from you through the chat box. My outline for today is I'm going to talk about trees with really nice fall foliage. First several I want to talk about are native trees, Virginia native trees. Then I would talk about some introduced ones. We'll have time for a few questions. Then we'll move into some shrubs and have time for more questions. But we certainly look forward to hearing from you. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start my PowerPoint, and we'll just go from there. Great. So as I said, I want to talk about some native trees, and a lot of you probably recognize this. Here in the Virginia Mid-Atlantic area, we are really, really blessed again by having one of the most diverse populations of trees and plants. I mean, really not just trees, but plants, because we get northern species that come down, start hitting their southern limit, southern species that start to come up and hit their northern limit. We overlap, and a lot of this leads to some of the most spectacular fall color that you can imagine. So again, what is happening as the days get shorter and shorter and shorter, this sort of triggers the trees or initiates where they stop their growth for the year, start to set their flower buds. They will also then start to form, we call an abscission layer between the leaf and the stem. All this leading up to preparation for their winter dormancy. And the shedding of leaves is one of the adaptations plants have to conserve resources throughout the winter. As this happens, of course, it changes the pigmentation in the leaf. So chlorophyll, which is really key in performing photosynthesis, it begins to degrade because there's a bit less sunlight available to them. And then it allows other pigments, and we call it carotenoids and anthocyanins and so forth, to come through and blend into this really rich color palette that you see here. So I've used a lot of these pictures at the same time, but you can see I love this one. The big tall yellow tree is a hickory. You've got American holly under there, and then that deep red is the dogwood. So all these just wonderful native trees, native plantings. This just the way it occurred as nature intended. This not designed by man, but somebody did go in there and kind of tidy things up, put an edge on there, make it look really nice. So the dogwood, which most of us know and appreciate and think of as a spring flowering tree, does bloom for us about the first week of April, and the blossoms are spectacular. That will happen before it even leaves out. But as it goes in through the growing season and you have a nice structured tree, but right now you get another series of beautiful traction that comes to it as you will begin to see this deep bright red color come out of it. Berries are already in there starting to take the color. If you were to go out and look in our tree and shrub beds right now, you would find them almost at this state of development with the berries on there and the leaves. And so this is why I say it's really a tree that serves for year-round interest. It serves so much ecological value, again, in providing the berries and a food source for birds and other wildlife. It's just unsurpassed, and that's why we have so many varieties. Now, I will say that the dogwood, it has more than its share of pest issues in terms of it can get things like mildew and leaf spot. There's even a borer that goes on it. So we see these quite often at plant clinic, but that is no reason to not plant them. I would still love to see them continued feature in the landscape. And plus, it's kind of moderate size, where we're talking about, 20 feet tall at most, 20 feet wide, 20 feet tall, and a mature one. It fits into our urban landscapes. This edge of woods habitat where it gets some shelter from the really hot midday sun is probably the ideal environment for them. If you plant them in deep shade, their flowering diminishes or they don't bloom at all. If you can get them out there in kind of this half sun, half shade, then it's the best of both worlds. Where they get a little bit of shelter from the really intense heat and drying conditions, but also enough sun to produce really beautiful blooms for you. Redbud, another native tree, which is again prized mostly for its magenta pink blossoms that occur in very early spring, again, before it leaves out. And it has that unique characteristic where all these blossoms kind of form along the branches. So it starts to really highlight the form of the plant. It grows in pretty much the same environment that dogwoods do. So it has that kind of understory size and stature, which works so well for us in the landscape with smaller properties that are out there. And so this, much like the dogwood, has those values as a Virginia native plant, where it is helping support wildlife, with the seed positive forms. And again, this is just the fall coloration, which I again think gets overshadowed because the flowers are so spectacular, and that's certainly a good thing. That's not a problem, but we don't recognize this is another tree that gives us so much value and interest as a four-season tree. You can't quite see it in this image, but after the leaves shed off of this and you just see the branching structure has this very distinctive zigzag shaped leaf, goes just like a Z in there, which is a little bit of an identification clue, but it also adds sort of this nice architectural element to it. Again, there's been a proliferation, many different varieties that are out there. This one I kind of put in there as a little bit of a kind of my joke picture, because this looks just like the fall color on here, except you can see all the other trees around there are fully leafed out. The grass is green, the sky is blue, because this is actually a spring photograph. This one is a variety that's called Hearts of Gold. And what a lot of the breeders have done is started selecting and developing and introducing cultivars of this tree. And what we're doing is adding these different leaf colors into it, in a sense, trying to add another element of interest into there. So we have red buds now that go anywhere from having a deep plum colored leaf, you might see in forest pansy, like this one, Hearts of Gold, with this bright lemon yellow color into it. The real kind of hot commodity out there is a variety, it's called Flamethrower. It gets its name because it does look like it's on fire, and it has a variety of a range of different leaf colors in there. There's variegated ones. It also has a variability in its branching structure, where these have been essentially trained into a single trunk. Again, nurseries will do this, where you get a little bit higher branching canopy on it and more of a single trunk that allows for us to continue to grow things, in this case like lawns underneath. It can also occur as a multi-branched or multi-stemmed type of tree. So again, these are just great landscape trees, and don't overlook the fall color. But you can have here with this one, the Hearts of Gold, you can kind of have that fall color year round. So another one I put in here is the sourwood, Oxydendron arboreum. You don't see this tree so much here in Northern Virginia. It is a Virginia native, but it really occurs in the southern tier of counties and even out all the way west into the mountainous areas. But it's not locally native, not here in the immediate Northern Virginia area. I think, and this is what I've been watching this tree for a long time, trying to figure out why we don't see more of it. I think a part of it is it really needs a reasonably well-drained soil. And I think in our heavy, dense clay that we tend to have, this is a tree that can struggle a little bit. Now, it's worth pursuing. It is absolutely one that I would recommend anybody to try in their garden. It can grow to be a medium-sized tree, but it's a slow grower, so it can serve that purpose kind of as a small to medium tree in our landscapes. It has this very wonderful flowering quality that we're looking at, usually right in about July time period. And I put a close-up of that bloom in there because if you look at that, it's pretty much identical to what you would see on a blueberry or a Pears japonica. That's because these are all in the same family. These all live within the heath family. So you think of azaleas, rhododendrons, Pears japonica, blueberries. They are all closely related, being that they're in the same family. And you can see that similarity when you look at the flower structure. I also say that's why I think it's like those other plants, we really need to make sure that it's an area that has good drainage in there, that can also get some leaf spot diseases in there. So it may not be what I'm going to call a foolproof tree, but it is so worthwhile in having it because of beautiful flowers, beautiful structure and form on it, and spectacular fall color. These are some of the early ones to go into this just crimson red coloration that's in there. And it is definitely a showstopper that's in there. It's also one that I think, for people that produce honey, certainly recognize this because a very good honey producer, good for pollinators, and with so many good things to say about it. And if you're willing to try something a little different, diversify your landscape and everything, I'd love to see this sourwood in there. We have a nice selection in stock. I think you'll see them because they can be a little fussy on transplanting. They come in with really nice sized root balls on there. and certainly one that I would love to see planted more out in the landscape. And it's in our slide set today because the fall coloration on it is just unbeatable. I think the fall coloration in this case kind of exceeds what the summer blooms do for us. This is a black gum. If any of you joined me, I was part of a panel discussion on native trees for fall color on Tuesday with Michael Fay and Joel Cook. We all have kind of this mutual love relationship with this tree because black gum, as you can see, it gets quite large. So this is an overstory tree, but it is so durable and reliable and beautiful. This is certainly one of my go-to trees. This one, as you can see, grows in these kind of moist habitats. So it does quite well. It's one of the few trees I think can actually just thrive in heavy clay soil. I never am trying to recommend this to anybody, but my previous home, I had a black gum in the front yard that got buried through the construction process as they were grading for construction of the house. That black gum got covered with about 10 inches deep of soil. When I see that, that pretty much spells certain death to trees. You just can't do that. They can't survive it. Well, this black gum survived it, adapted, and continued to thrive. So they can live in these low oxygen, kind of poorly drained soils, which a lot of us struggle with. So in terms of durability, unsurpassed, just a really nice form and structure. They'll get sort of this upright oval type of shape to it, strong branching. They're very clean, don't create any type of mess. And their real selling point also in this is the fall color here is just absolutely unbeatable. It's one of the earliest to start to show color. So if you're out driving through the mountains this fall or taking in the fall color, one of the leaf peepers, you'll see these little puffs of red out there. Always in my mind, it looked like, if any of you are kind of my age group, you think of like the Trix breakfast cereal, which yes, I did eat when I was young. And you had all these different colors in there. And then these would look like these, that's what the forest would look like to me, like these little pops of red showing out in there. And if it's early in the season, that's probably a black gum that you're looking at. And this has progressed to the point we have several cultivars of them now available to you, where you can get a consistency in the coloration. And when I talk about cultivars, this is a very good demonstration of exactly what I mean. So this is red maple. Red maple is really the probably, I think it's the #1 tree species in our forests in this area. In terms of actual number of trees, this makes up a higher percentage than I think almost any other tree species does. So well adapted. Again, it can grow in our dense clay soils. It can tolerate poor drainage. It thrives in these neglectful, harsh conditions, which is one of the reasons we use it, because of its durability. It's a fast grower, and none of us are patient. So that's a real asset that goes with it. But it's the fall coloration that brings it to center stage. But when you look at red maple, they can go anywhere from a bright yellow to a crimson red and anything in between. So these 3 trees are all the same species of tree. But what growers do is they will clone it. They will find one that has a particular quality. It might be a dense red color, really sturdy branching pattern of, some they even go for seedless varieties and stuff. But they will find a particular quality that's desired and continue to propagate it or clone it from that. So when you come into the garden center and you start seeing names like Red Point or October Glory or Red Sunset, these are selected there for a consistent quality that's in there. So if you're just buying a seedling grown, or if you're buying, or you just see them out in the forest, you'll see this kind of variation that goes in the colors. Not a thing in the world wrong with this. A lot of biologists and ecologists will tell you diversification is what we want for more resilient forest. And so it's a good thing. But in this case, you could see what happened as a commercial landscape. And I'm almost certain here that occasionally you had all these were planted, all one variety, one cultivar, but as one tree dies off, it gets replaced. If another tree dies off, it gets replaced. And if we don't know exactly what it is, you end up with this kind of effect, which to me, not bad, nothing at all wrong with that. But for whoever the designer was, they may be a little bit disappointed as we start to lose some consistency that's in there. I'm going to look at one more native here, and then we'll switch gears a little bit. This would be back to an example of where this shopping center is planted with the red maple, and it provides that kind of consistency and uniformity in color throughout there. So again, we have so many of these to choose from. I don't like to get stuck or recommend specific names. That's why you come in, you look at it, kind of see what you like best, make your choices. You really can't go wrong with a red maple in any shape or size or form. The sugar maple, this is a wider, broader, some more rounded tree. We are reaching the southernmost limits on this, so it becomes more common as you grow further north, though it is a native tree throughout Virginia, including here in Northern Virginia. But like I said, if you go much south of us, they become fewer and fewer in number. So what we have done in the nursery trade is tried to identify those that seem to give us the best heat and drought tolerance, that will thrive under our local conditions here. But this is the one that will really, really light up in the fall. If you've ever seen a big rounded tree and it's going through the full range of colors, all at the same time, you can sort of have yellows, oranges, reds overlapping as this goes through a transition. I love the way this tree just changes in its hue and color as it goes from the start of the fall season to the end of the fall season. And like I said, you'll see these overlap. So sometimes you don't always get just a uniform red or orange. You get the whole series of the color palette that goes through. And to me, that's a real asset that might go with having the sugar maple that's out there. Now I am switching gears. I want to talk about a couple trees that are not native or indigenous to our region here, but certainly merit some more attention. Clearly, Chinese pistache is from Asia. It's not a local here. I go back to the late Dr. Bonnie Appleton. She was a horticulture extension specialist with Virginia Tech. Passed away unfortunately early, but many years ago. She had identified this tree as one that certainly merits more attention. If you go into the southern tier of the United States, they are growing in that area under very hot, dry conditions. She took it on as sort of a personal effort to try to introduce this to gardeners in Virginia because of its durability, its heat and drought resistance. Again, keep in mind the research station was down in Virginia Beach, so heat and drought tolerance, adaptability, those kind of conditions was important for her and the work she was doing. But this is a sort of a medium statured tree, very, very durable. And I'm telling you, when this thing goes into fall color, it literally is like it's like it's lit up. This tree, the main one that you're looking at here, actually both these images I took when I was visiting Meadowlark Gardens, which is a great horticulture garden, botanical garden for Northern Virginia Regional Park Authority. If you ever have a chance or you want to take in some fall color, this is a great place to visit and learn. So this, you can see, was kind of a cloudy, overcast day, but I'm telling you, if you hit it right in the sunlight, this thing, I was standing probably 500-600 feet away from this tree, and it's down there, it's glowing, and I sort of say, what is that? Have to go down there and discover this is the Chinese pistache. One of my colleagues, Michael Fay, again, you'll hear him talk a lot about trees. He, again, I think sort of was introduced to it by Dr. Bonnie Appleton, but he really started recommending it and planting it on a lot of different customers' lots. He's had a chance to observe this over a longer period of time. He's given it a thumbs up and had 2 of them planted in our parking lot here at the Fair Oaks location. And so now I'm really excited to watch this and learn more about it as it goes over the years. But fall color, you definitely should check this one out.
We've got a question about this one. How tall does it grow? and maturity?
I don't exactly know, because again, I'm trying to say I'm not terribly familiar with it. I think we're talking about like 35 feet tall, 35 feet wide, what I would call sort of a medium-sized tree. But anything I tell you on that, you should double check me on it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Switching gears, and then we will take a couple questions. But once I started down this road, I started thinking, well, we're talking about Asian species. You certainly have to talk about the ginkgo. Ginkgo is just such an interesting tree with such a long history and interesting biology. It's this leaf shape that is just kind of captured just everybody's attention that's on there. And again, when you go into the fall season, develops just this brilliant yellow coloration. And one of the things that people will like about this is those leaves suddenly just all drop at the same time on the same day. So if you are somebody who is collecting and raking leaves, and it's like, wow, I raked leaves last week, and then this week there's more, and then the next week there's more. One of the things that's nice is this will all drop to the ground. And apparently in Japan and China, when this happens, it's almost like the cherry blossoms that we have here in spring. Crowds will gather to come experience this. And actually, if you're in the right place at the right time, you can sit there and watch these leaves all cascade and fall down at the same time. I, again, have never actually been the right place at the right time to see that, but that is absolutely something that's got to be dramatic. One of the things that I put with this ginkgo in is it has a very, very long history. It shows up in fossil records that go back well more than 200 million years, probably back 230 million years. It's looked at a lot by paleobotanists and such, and they're kind of thinking this might mark a point in the evolution of plants, that sort of bridges the gap between plants that originated in the water and then became what we call the gymnosperms, the cone producing seeds, and then into the angiosperms, the flowering plants. So this in the evolution of plants may represent a real critical link, almost what I might call a missing link in the evolution of plants. Was thought to be extinct, found only in fossil records. And then I think it wasn't really even until the very late 1800s, early 1900s, that they found a surviving population in one province of China. And then they've been able to, I don't want to say restore, but preserve that plant in arboretums and landscapes, and even though it is still endangered in its natural environment. So it's got just a unique place in the history of plants, and tough, durable, pest resistant, and gorgeous. Now it will get big, it will get tall, but we go all the way from little dwarf ones like I have on my desk here with me up to ones that will get 100 feet tall or more. So there will be one to suit your needs. And I'm going through these quickly because I know I have so much and I want to get your questions in there. But when I put the ginkgo in, I thought, I've been working here at Merrifield Garden for 27 years. And the best of my memory, I don't think even once, I've put the dawn redwood into any of my presentations or classes. And I started feeling so guilty about having overlooked such a magnificent tree. And a lot of this, again, I think it was when I was visiting Meadowlark last year, and I found they had a couple of nice ones planted out in the landscape. I thought, well, if we're going to talk about ancient tree species, then we have to talk about the dawn redwood. Because this, again, it's a conifer, like we're showing here. This has cones that it produces. So that tells us, as far as its evolutionary history, this goes way back. It goes back further than than the flowering plants are. These trees actually go back, we know, at least 153 million years or more, because that's back when we had just one landmass, and before the continents even started separating, these trees existed. Now the metasequoia, the dawn redwood, is native to Asia, China, and Japan, that region of the world. But we know from fossil records at one time, they did also exist here in North America. So it's a really cool tree. They will get big, you know, they can go again 70, 80 feet tall, sort of this upright pyramidal form of. As they start to go into their fall, you get a little bit of this yellowish coloration that's in there. And again, just a really sturdy, reliable, interesting tree. But we're talking about, like, again, overstory size. You got to have some room for that. Along with that, I thought, well, if I'm going down this path, and I'll show you when we get back here in person, we also, in our native world, I want to say that we do have the Taxodium dissectum, the bald cypress. Bald cypress, it's a close relative here. It looks almost identical, and it's a Virginia native. Again, it goes more in coastal areas, it grows the bald cypress in more kind of like swamp-like conditions, but it is very well adapted. And so if you want to stay in the native environment, don't overlook, and certainly give a moment to look at that taxodium, the bald cypress. So what I'm going to do is we'll see if I have any questions here, and then I'll switch gears and talk about a few shrubs.
All right. Thanks, David. Okay, we've got a lot of questions here. So a quick reminder to you all, if you have questions that are really specific to your needs, I may have to redirect you to David to talk to David after the class. We'll try and get to you. But we are going to start with stuff specifically related to fall color, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so first question. Timothy is looking for a okay, let me read this question. He wants to know if a Japanese maple would tolerate full sun and won't get too big as a tree. They have good fall color, right?
Japanese maples have spectacular fall color. Okay,
that's what I think he's asking. Small tree,
right?
Full sun, would a Japanese maple work?
Very good choice. Like I said, there's a lot of different varieties, and they can go anywhere from like small to medium, meaning that, you know, you can pick varieties that might go anywhere from, let's say, 10 or 12 foot tall, all the way up to some that might be 30 foot tall and wide. So real diverse group. There's literally thousands of different varieties. And we just got a new delivery in. We've got some from some new vendors. We've got probably the best selection of Japanese maples I've ever seen right now today. So you owe it yourself, come in. The one thing I will say, though, and you touched on here, it is not the most heat and drought tolerant tree. You can put them in full sun, but sometimes when it gets really hot and dry in our climate, they start getting this leaf scorch, this browning that occurs out at the tips of the branch. So I feel like it doesn't mean you can't do it, but I would make sure if I'm putting it in a hot, dry environment, I do sort of an extra good job of my soil preparation, making sure this tree has the opportunity to develop a strong, extensive root system. You also want to pay a little closer attention to it if we go into these really hot, dry spells. And it also means that you have to be a little bit tolerant of a little bit of that leaf scorch that's in there. So I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying, yes, that's a good choice. Go for it. But make sure that it fits with your expectations of knowing that it might need a little bit of attention during sort of hot, dry weather. Okay,
great. Next question. Is there an alternative to the ginkgo that's less expensive, but it has the same brilliant? Okay, so they're looking for a tree for a small urban yard with that same vibrant yellow color, ideally less expensive. I'm not sure if you have info on pricing, but just that same vibrant yellow.
Yeah, so let me say ginkgo is not any more expensive than any other tree that goes in. The problem that you might encounter is if the parent tree wants to grow to be 100 feet tall or smaller. So if you're looking for, there are some sort of miniature forms of it. So then anytime, whether it's like a ginkgo or something, then you start going into where you're paying, but that's because it's a sort of a miniature cultivar. This is a ginkgo.
We had a question about how tall that ginkgo would get.
Right. But back
how tall will it get to, you know? Will it grow 100 feet?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
The question was, how tall will that ginkgo sitting next to you get?
Oh, this one, it's a real small form. It's over the next 10 years, it might get 5 feet tall.
Ah,
but there's
that's a good one then.
Yeah, but we have others. I don't even know. We've got some that are a little bit more upright and some intermediate sizes in there. It's again, there's been different cultivars developed because it's such a cool tree. While I'm on that, and I haven't forgotten your question about yellow fall color, but
Yes.
on this side of me, I'm kind of like reverse of you. On my right-hand side back here, this is I'll never get used to this, so I keep my hands. But on the one side, or my right side, is it's a compact small form of the Metasequoia glyptus stroboides, the dawn redwood, and the other side of me is this side of me, that's the Taxodium, the bald cypress. Again, a miniature version. I think they call it Little Jim or something. So again, this was cool in some of these cultivars that you have. Small tree with bright yellow coloration. Again, the red buds might fit that equation for you. I still think there's some Japanese maples, like the coral bark Japanese maple might be one for you to consider. Look at some of the small forms of ginkgo that's out there. And if I could think about, there might be a few other ideas as well.
Okay. For fall foliage, what are some natives you would recommend to replace some shrub? I guess we're going to get into shrubs soon. Maybe we should hold this one for shrubs. So this person's looking for natives that have fall color that can replace some invasive plants she's trying to pull out from her fence line, but she's talking shrubs, so we can probably wait on that. Oh, okay. And we just did get information in. I was asking about we had a question about a dwarf plant, and I was trying to get some clarification on the size. So this person is looking for a dwarf 10 to 14 foot spring flowering tree that has fall color. It gets about 6 to 7 hours of sun. So the question is, could they move a Kusa dogwood to this location, or is there another tree that you would recommend?
Yeah, I was going to say immediately, any of the dogwoods kind of fit into that category and that's
The Kusa or the native dogwood?
Yeah, whether you do the Kusa or the dogwood, either one of them would thrive in that kind of condition. They both go a red color. The Kusa tends to be a deeper, kind of more burgundy plum red, but they're both excellent choices that are in there. Red buds, which I'd mentioned, of course, that's in there. And we're looking for spring flower with nice fall.
Yeah.
Yeah, dogwoods and red buds
probably really good.
Pretty hard to beat on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
How about we talk a little bit about some shrubs, or did you?
Sounds good. I want to ask you one question quick, because we get this question a lot and it's not related to fall color, but I think we're going to get more. When is the best time to prune these trees? What time of year?
Generally, I like to do my pruning in the middle of winter when they are fully dormant. That's in there. I really don't like to prune right now, because we're talking about how trees start undergoing a lot of physiological changes with the short days and the changing temperatures. You know, there's a lot of hormones moving in there as this plant's shutting down, starting to go into its fall dormancy, and there's still a lot of sap flowing in there. So if you're pruning at this time of year, you can disrupt the dormancy process, which ultimately leads to a greater risk of winter injury that's in there. You also have, sap oozing and flowing from there, which can just be a little bit messy. And we still have more insect activity. So right now, I'm definitely kind of a hands-off person as far as pruning goes. And I think the very best time will be in the middle of winter when they're completely dormant, they're sleeping. You can see the branching structure, and of course, we'll have classes to show you just how to do that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I know we get that question pretty much every time we talk about trees, so I wanted to go ahead and address it. All right, we can move on to shrubs.
All right, well, I'm going to try to do this quickly, which is always a challenge, but because we had some questions, and those of you that were asking about native shrubs, with spectacular fall color, nice blooms, I don't know if you can really do much better than this Fothergilla. Again, Fothergilla is not a Virginia native, it's more in the southeastern US, but they do wonderful in our environment. So this close-up of the flower blossom, that is probably right about the first week of April. It doesn't have petals, it just has these stamens that come out, which are really cool look. They have a nice, gentle fragrance to it. So I'm saying, hey, I got spring blooms, I've got fragrance, kind of a unique quality that's there. They form sometimes almost this I'm going to use this word thicket, a lot of branching comes out, not a real defined structure, but the fall coloration is really kind of unbeatable. This is just kind of the beginning of the fall color sequence that's in there. This is a variety, it's called Suzanne. It was I think it was a Michael Durr development, if I read, from down University of Georgia. And it was developed specifically for a little more compact size and a little more consistent fall coloration. This is in my front yard, small townhouse garden. So compact size was definitely a real key for me. But you can get these. We have 2 or 3 different varieties, mostly in different size. But if you want something, again, that's reliable, that's pest-free, gives you year-round interest in there, I think this is one that you absolutely should take a look at. Now, another member of the hazel family, same family, different plant, is the witch hazel, which you can see right here, the similarity in the leaf shape. And this, again, to me, is definitely a winner. When I was trying to find a real centerpiece in my garden, this is what I landed on, because, and I've got flowers that are occurring for me in February and March, nice structure that carries me through the summer. And then the fall coloration on it is really where this begins to take center stage and draw everybody's attention. Now, this is the Asian form of it. Our native witch hazel is absolutely one that you should also consider that's in there. It's just what they do is our native one blooms in the fall, and it's got smaller flowers on there. I was kind of going for the larger, showier kind of look that's in there. So this is the one I went with. And it's a variety, it's called Arnold's Promise, but there's a lot of different choices within there. And that really is often dictated by just the flower color. One more, and then because I want to make sure we have a little bit of time for questions, is the oak leaf hydrangea. Again, this is a southeastern native. We've got a lot of different varieties. These pictures came off of one, again, in my little townhouse garden. One's called Munchkin, because it tends to be, it's a very small plant. I've had it in the ground for 6 years now. It's still only about 3 foot by 3 foot. So it's just a really compact, slow grower. And again, spring blooms, flowering for us in May, nice coarse textured leaves in the summer. Fall coloration, this burgundy color really just adds that whole nother season of interest to it. I'm going to skip through a couple of these slides here, but what I wanted to do was tell you that evergreens also change color in the fall. Evergreens also shed their leaves, and that time is coming up right now in October. I had my very first customer at the plant clinic yesterday asking what's wrong with this pine, and it took quite a bit of effort to convince them that this was a normal seasonal pattern that's in there. What happens on these needled evergreens and cypress and so on, they will hold their needles for 2 or 3 years. So what you have in here is you might have the current season's growth, the second season's growth, but then they shed that interior growth. So when you see this happening this month, and it happens in October, this will probably really kick in over the next week or two. But if you see this, where it's yellowing and shedding on the inside, but remaining on the green at the tips, this is just the natural sequence. You'll see this in your cypress trees as well. But what happens is you get this yellowing and shedding on the little interior branchlets. I think it's going to be more noticeable and more dramatic this year as a result of our dry conditions, because if a tree is in a stressed environment, it's been a difficult growing year, this also is often more pronounced. And so people say, oh, I've never seen it before. And it's like, no, this happens every year. It's just kind of catching your attention more so this year. So Sally, let's use our last couple minutes here with questions.
Ooh, trying to find the mute button, lost it for a second. All righty, so okay. I'm gonna start with our last one that's on fall colors specifically, and then we'll move on to some others that are tree and shrub related. What native trees would you recommend to plant in peninsulas? We have been successful with lindens and even a large maple in our community. So I'm guessing that's like wet tolerant, perhaps.
Right. So if you're looking for like sort of large shade trees, what we call, I like the term overstory trees. Some of these I showed, like to me, the black gum is one that is just, it really works in a lot of places because it can deal with kind of harsh environments, unfavorable environments, which we also encounter. Fall color is great, and it doesn't really get any significant pest issues. It's clean, it doesn't create a mess. So I think that is certainly one that merits more attention than it gets. Plus, they're pretty much widely available in the industry. When I first started here, 20 plus years ago, you couldn't really buy a black gum. They had this reputation, oh, they don't transplant well or something. It just took the demand for native trees to come about, and now we've got a really strong selection that's in there. I'm going to put another one out there just for conversation purposes. It's called hackberry, or sometimes a sugar tree, I think they call it, Celtis occidentalis. It does create like almost a little small nut, smaller than an acorn, but because it drops that little nut, that could be a little bit of a deal breaker or something that you have to reconsider, because again, if you're parking under there, people walking under there, it's just something you have to be aware of. It's not a deal breaker, but that's a tree that doesn't get utilized near enough in our landscapes. And again, I think it has a lot of potential to add some diversity back into our plantings.
That's good. Okay, next we've got a couple of questions. We have 3, so we'll just go ahead and wrap these up. My dogwood has some small roots on the surface of the ground. Is it okay to cover those roots with leaf grow and some mulch?
Yes, absolutely fine. When I talk about covering root systems, we don't want to put heavy soil or dense soil or anything that's going to compact down, because those roots are up near the surface, because that's where they can get the oxygen that they need. Again, with our heavy clay soil, we just don't get oxygen diffusing down into the soil very deep, and they need water, but they also need oxygen. So they will start growing roots up near the surface where they can get the balance of, they've got good nutrition, sufficient moisture, and enough oxygen to breathe. So if we're talking about something like leaf grow, mulch, even a very thin layer of loose topsoil, I'm totally kind of okay with that. What we don't want is when we start doing this, what they call volcano mulching. We never want mulch piled up against the trunk of the tree, that stem tissue. It's intended to be above ground, and we don't want to be piling, backfill clay up against the trees. We got to avoid those kind of extremes.
Gotcha. Okay, quick question that we get on these classes, so I'm going to jump ahead and ask this one. Is October a good time to plant native shrubs, for example, oak leaf hydrangea? So
yes, October is a phenomenal planting season. It has an opportunity, gives plants a little bit of an opportunity to get some roots established before we really go into the full dormancy that's there. It's a great month to be outside working your garden. Something I just have to say every time I get this question, when you purchase or when you plant something new, you have to take ownership on the watering. Even if we talk about something as drought tolerant that's adapted, for that first year, you have to take ownership of the watering until it gets those roots established. And last year, we had one of the driest winters we've ever experienced in the past 100 years. It was 50, 60, even 70 degrees, no rain, no sleet, no water. We went into to June, and we went until we had any rain, and we were 7 inches under rainfall. So a lot of stuff, more than I've ever seen in my life. It was planted last October, was dead by April. That was an extreme condition, and that could have been prevented if you'd just gone out and watered once or twice last winter. So yes, plant now is a fantastic time, but that qualifier that if we get into extremely dry conditions, you still own the watering on it.
All right. Okay, we're gonna do these last two questions and then we're gonna have to call because we are over time, guys. Sorry, but we're happy to answer your questions. David's happy to answer your questions. If you want to contact us after the plant clinic. Okay, so last two questions. One, is there a way to keep the flowers on oak leaf hydrangea from turning brown so quickly on an established plant? It got hot this summer and wilted in the hot sun, and then they lost their flowers. They were brown.
I think a lot of that had to do with the really extreme heat. Now that is a
I
normal,
know we had issues with other hydrangeas too. We got questions on that.
yeah, that's kind of a normal thing that happens to them. But one is like oak leaf does its very best in a little bit of shade, somewhat sheltered conditions. So if we can protect it from the extreme full sun and heat, that will extend the longevity of the blossoms. They normally go from sort of the white, some of them even a little bit of pink in there, to sort of a nice russet color before they turn that really just brown. I think a lot of plants, when we hit that 2 weeks of like 99, 100-degree heat and no rain in August and the year we've been through, I think a lot of plants in our garden, just like you and just like me, I think we all just kind of gave up a little bit this summer. But yeah, a little bit of protection would be the best thing you could do, from a little shade.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. I think this is a question. No, wait, this may be from an old. I thought the Amsonia blue star was the thin leaf plant in the background, not the shrub in the front. This may be from a picture, unless you have Amsonia in front of you.
You are exactly right, and
Okay.
I think I overlooked that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not a tree, it's not a shrub, but in my picture, this back here is an
That's
urbane
Amsonia.
perennial.
No?
It does die back to the ground in the winter months and comes back from the roots each year. Again, it's that perennial that looks better in the fall than it does in the spring. So I'm glad somebody caught that, because again, that's a top performing plant, native to the southern US, heat and drought tolerant. It can find a place in anybody's garden.
Gotcha. All right. Well, guys, I'm sorry. I know we have a few questions left, but we're already over by 7 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and call it for today. Please do feel free, as I said, to email either myself or David. Call the plant clinic. David's usually at the Fair Oaks Plant Clinic, but all three of our plant clinics are happy to assist you. If you have a store you prefer to shop at, you can go see your plant clinic there. David, what would you like to conclude?
Just said, come see us, visit us. I'm just one of a great team of people that love plants and love to show them off to everybody. It is a great planting season, and I will see you back here in a couple of weeks.
All right. Bye, everybody. Have a good afternoon. Thanks, David.
Thanks.